Good afternoon. I would like to make the comment that this is a school project. This is in no way, shape, or form an expert talk on this subject matter. I have done my research. If you learn something, then fantastic. But please do not use this as a end-all, be-all on transgender healthcare. Do consult your healthcare provider if you have any questions. Good afternoon, Swedish healthcare and our frontline healthcare providers. You are our greatest asset, and thank you today for joining us on this talk about transgender healthcare needs and how those are different from cisgender healthcare needs. To begin this, we probably need to identify the difference between sex and gender. The World Health Organization describes sex as the characteristics that we are born with biologically that can be defined visually at birth, whereas gender is based on social constructed features, and there are variations in this, and some of these variations are how people experience gender, how their self-perception of their gender, and how they express their gender, and how they behave in their everyday life. Most, if not all of us, are born with physical traits that label us male or female at birth. This is our sex. This is put on our birth certificate. Gender's a completely different story altogether. And actually in 1964, Robert Stoller coined the term gender identity. And this this term refers to an individual's personal concept about their gender and how they feel inside. So quite obviously, gender identity differs from sexual identity, which also differs from sexual orientation, which we are not speaking about today. As we learn more about sexual identity and gender identity, we definitely learn that it's not just a binary system. It's not just male, it's not just female, but more a spectrum that we kind of fall on. And transgender people fall on this non-binary scale. Transgender and gender diverse individuals, they face harassment that cisgender people do not face, discrimination and rejection within society. One way to combat this is respectful language. And what I mean by that is respectful language helps establish trusting relationships between you and your patients. So if you would just think about how you use language every day when talking to your patient, and oftentimes we make assumptions about a patient's relationship, their sexual orientation, gender identity, and their culture. And how can we improve that communication to be non-judgmental, more inclusive, and more appropriate for a wider, more diverse group of patients? Well, first thing we can do is refrain from using language that assumes sexual orientation, gender identity, and relationships. So instead of asking a female patient or assuming a female patient has a male partner or is married, instead ask, do you have a partner or a spouse? And what is their name? Listen to your patients. Listen to their descriptions of themselves. Listen to their descriptions of their partners. And then mirror that language back to them to prove to them and show to them that you have heard them, you accept them, and this does not change them in your views. Ask open-ended questions and allow patients to fill in the gaps. When you're unsure of someone's relationship or identity, just ask, who do you have here with you today? How would you like me to address you? Use gender-neutral language until the appropriate term is identified by the patient. Instead of saying, ma'am, I need to start your IV, you can just say, I need to start an IV. This type of communication is not just for LGBT patients. This type of language respects all patients and their relationships and will make all patients feel more welcome. when you do have these relationships, a lot of EHRs these days have a place in the demographics where you can identify a person's preferred pronouns. If that's not there in the notes section, document these interactions that you've had with a patient so that the nurse that comes on in the next shift, or if they go down to a procedural area, they're able to read these notes and then not have to go through the same process with the patient every time. It means a lot to transgender patients when they feel that they're being heard and understood. And one way we can do that is to read their chart and understand their entire history, including their gender identity. So unless you're LGBT or know someone that's been affected by LGBT plus discrimination, you're probably not that aware of it. Many LGBT, especially transgender individuals, will delay seeking care until absolutely necessary. And many of them forego preventative medical care due to prior negative experiences because of fear of discrimination. There's also valid worries about violence from healthcare staff, depending on the region or part of the country that you're in. If they do disclose their transgender status to you, that's a fear that they have, and it's a legitimate fear. There's also a fear of being outed, meaning the healthcare professional could break the confidence, HIPAA violation, and share the sexual orientation and or gender identity of the patient with others who don't know, and also don't need to know. If they're not part of their healthcare team, and actually even if they're part of their healthcare team and don't need to know that someone is transgender, just sharing that person's pronouns with them is enough without saying they're transgender. While same-sex marriage is now legal in many states, some states still lack anti-discrimination legislation that would protect same-sex couples with partner benefits, therefore reducing the number of LGBT individuals covered with health insurance. As we all know, healthcare is very expensive. You can only imagine the healthcare treatments that transgender people have to go through tend to add up quickly. And without insurance, this is oftentimes not an option for transgender patients. In a healthcare crisis, prejudicial policies can cause partners to be denied visitation rights, denied time off from work for benefits for a non-recognized family member, or even face legal challenges from estranged or more traditional immediate family. Many health plans, as I said, still fail to cover mental health issues, cross-sex hormone therapy, gender-affirmed surgeries. And again, if there's not providers available that are trained to deal with LGBT issues and needs, then it makes it more difficult to access quality care. Our homepage has links to community resources that cisgender people take for granted or won't ever need. I encourage you to take the time to familiarize yourself with these services. Some of these services include ID documentation support, legal services, and financial assistance groups for gender-affirming surgeries. There's also groups that provide things that cisgender people may not even think of. One of those being banding for trans women. If you don't know what banding is, it's just that. It's banding of your breasts. And if these aren't, if this isn't done properly or by using approved binding materials and devices, then they can cause other health issues such as respiratory issues or broken ribs or even skin ulcerations. Sometimes words are hard. So there's all these unique needs of the transgender patient, especially endocrinologists who treat hormone therapy for transgender patients. If they haven't had the training needed to not only provide the patient with the hormone therapy treatment, but to continuously check their hormone levels and know what it should or should not look like for a transgender male or female. Then we can get into some other serious health issues. The lack of specialized care, the main reason being discrimination, leads to higher rates of suicide and depression among this group of people that is already struggling emotionally. I will say that transgender healthcare is growing and is becoming part of the curriculum at most and hopefully soon all medical schools. And by teaching our future providers about the special needs for transgender patients, we ensure their level of care will continue to increase as well. Thanks for taking the time here over the last few minutes to listen to and begin to understand the top level of transgender healthcare. I encourage you to look at the links that I described that we have on our homepage. And if you have any questions, reach out to a healthcare provider and have a great day. Thank you so much.